All right, everyone. It is 11 o'clock, so we will get started. It is so good to see all of you. And, you know, it's our 7th week meeting online for worship. And when we first started to make these big changes in mid-March, it felt like I was writing to you all every week. It felt like we were in communication a lot more frequently then. So, oh, sorry, y'all. I'm just realizing that Tim Farnum, our Board of Trustees president, who is a many-skilled human, who you'll hear from later, he's one of our primary ushers. And so he'll be a little busy right now. So if you all see anything in the chat or on the video that we should be aware of, just go ahead and make us aware of it. But Tim's going to be in conversation with me and with all of you. So in any case, here's one of the big changes, right? This way of ushering and greeting has shifted considerably. And we've been undergoing a lot of rapid change, and we've sort of settled into a rhythm. And so I just wanted us to be able to gather for a brief period of time in a way that we're not making our annual congregational meeting. It is practice for our budget hearings and our congregational meeting. Let us not be confused about that. It does give us a sense of how will that work when we need to do that. But because we've been experiencing so much change, I wanted us to be able to get together and name where we are right now and what's guiding us in this moment. So you'll first hear from me, and you'll also hear from Tim, our board president, as well as Kyle, who's on the board and is our stewardship chair. And we'll speak for about 20 minutes, and then we'll break into small groups so that each of you can share. And we'll ask folks to help facilitate that and take some notes as well so that we can gather up and hear what you're all talking about, what you're all saying. So I know that people are saying they aren't seeing my face big, and that's okay. You're gonna have, we'll go through some slides, and hopefully you have a little picture, a little video of whoever is speaking. So I'm seeing some people who can see both, and that's what's intended. You should see right now First Unitarian Church of Rochester's logo and my face as well, but it's small. It's not normally the big, shining face that we enjoy earlier on Sundays. Enjoy being, you know, you can use your discernment on whether that feels accurate for you. But in any case, let's see here. Let's dive in, because it's been 7 weeks and it's been a wild road. I'm hearing ask around subtitles. I will let you know that we don't have subtitles now. We'll get to that a little bit in just a minute. But in these first 7 weeks, there has been so much to celebrate. And so I'm just going to go through that quickly, name some of the highlights of the last few weeks. Oh, nope, that's backwards. So the biggest place where I'm seeing some real testimony to what kind of community of faith, what kind of spiritual and religious community we have gathered here at First Unitarian is the ways in which I see us caring for each other and for our community. There are so many, and I can't name them all here, and I couldn't even name them all on one slide. But the big ones are our communities of care. We've had 63 people who have volunteered to call, email, or text people in our community. There are over 800 people on that list. And we're not calling children, but if we did, we'd be talking about over 1,000 people in our community who we're checking in on, whether that's once a week or once every few weeks if people feel like they actually don't want us calling that much because, like Lynette, it makes them a little nervous. we found that some caring stewards, life gets busy and you can't keep up with that work and you need to pass it off for a while. Or maybe at the beginning you had a lot of things going on, but now you're able to take on that work. And that's a rotating roster. We've got about 50 people working on that at any given time. And that sort of flexibility for me is a really good sense of the way that we're caring for ourselves as well as for each other. I've seen people connecting to do all sorts of things like grocery runs and yard work, sharing fabric for mask sewing, and all sorts of informal connections. Our community partnerships are continuing. They're building on the strength that existed before COVID, but they're also transforming. There are new opportunities. And so I see people sewing masks for a few different efforts right now, as well as just sharing masks with each other. I see the ways in which though we can't actually pass around an offering plate, our virtual offering has continued to help support community work. And that has been a way that we're able to serve our greater community. Over 100 people have signed up for something that Harley Pinto invited us to do last week. Harley Pinto invited us to go to this website that has a ton of different options, and there are over 10 teams and over 100 people who have signed up, and people can still do that. It's a 6-week challenge. I'm also hearing testimonies, getting emails and phone calls from people who have either needed help, whether that's a stimulus check or some funding from the minister's discretionary fund. And that exercise of care is important. But then I'm seeing people who have discerned that what they have already is enough. And so with their stimulus check, they've been able to donate some or all of it. They've been able to give it either to the minister's discretionary fund or to other community organizations. And that's one of the key ways I'm seeing our community move into places of caring. Connections are also, for me, something to celebrate over the last couple of months. I'm hearing about Soul Matters groups that are meeting more regularly. We have new Facebook groups for parents in the wider community. Our ways of connecting in worship or with the staff and our community, the leaders of our community, have shifted. So we have Wednesday night Vespers, daily noontime connections, and the most popular one, hands down, is our Elder Tree noontime connection on Saturday. That ability to share stories across generations that's hosted by Reverend Libby Moore has been something that has done my heart a lot of good. It's also allowed me to get to know a lot of you better, even people I thought I already knew pretty well. I'm also hearing from Lynette and from lots of other people that they're calling up or emailing or texting people on their caring stewards list, people that they haven't yet met. And every week I get lots of people saying, I'm so excited to meet this person once we get together again. So I'm loving that the connections that I'm seeing being built and strengthened right now are things that will continue moving forward, and that new connections, new possibilities are growing right now. Worship, despite a few technical difficulties here and there, feels like a joy and a touchstone for many of us throughout the week. We're seeing creativity through Sheila finding fish and First Unitarian members down her creek during children's worship, to Tommy offering us an invitation to sing with him, to sing hymns in an immense variety of ways with different musical accompaniment and multiple Tommies, as on Easter. Reverend Bob's walk. I mean, the creativity that's happening in worship because of what may have been perceived as limitations, but are actually new possibilities, for me, is something to celebrate. In the first 2 months, we'll partner with 4 different congregations. 3 of them are local congregations. And then in a few weeks, we're going to be partnering with First Unitarian in Portland. And so that's a way in which we are leaning into our interdependence and really getting a sense of our connection with the wider Unitarian Universalist faith. Just a little bit about the numbers. Numbers aren't the most important thing, but I am overjoyed each week when I see how many people are joining us. We average about 360 logins on Sunday morning. And as I named early in this worship service, it's hard to know how many people we have. We know it's more than 360, but we don't know exactly. We get about 25 people each week on the phone. So people who don't have access to the internet or don't want to use the internet to dial into Zoom, you can just call up and listen to an audio of the service. We get 100+ views on YouTube. And you know, YouTube numbers are a little slippery. Online worship attendance is hard to track, but it's clear that each week we're engaging over 500 people. And I am seeing that I am having a screen share. Ooh, nope. Uh-oh. Sorry, y'all. I want to move those controls down, but I don't know how to do that. So I will just tell you what that slide says. So we pay a captionist to provide closed captioning on Sunday mornings. It's something we weren't doing when we were meeting in person, and it's an additional cost that we hadn't budgeted for initially. But we felt it was important to provide people who needed closed captioning or for whom closed captioning allows us to better access worship. And so big thanks to Amara Vervelin, who has come on, who has returned to us as a captionist on Sunday mornings. When we record both this meeting and other services, we can caption afterwards, but in terms of live captioning, this is a place that we commit to doing moving forward. So that's the look back. And Kyle and Tim will know that I probably talked longer than my fair share, but there's a ton to celebrate, and I'm so grateful to be in community with all of you. So let's move forward. What happens next? I will read this video aloud for those who are joining us by phone. Whoop. Nope. So it's a VUCA world. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But you already knew that. Yikes, things feel volatile, unsteady, complex, ambiguous. And even as we steady ourselves as much as we can in our lives, how do we get oriented as a congregation? By asking 3 questions: what, so what, and now what? We ask what to clarify our guiding assumptions. We ask so what, so that given those assumptions, what are the implications for congregations? And now what? Given those assumptions and implications, what will we do? So I want to thank Reverend Jake Morrill for this framing, this idea of asking what, so what, and now what, as we prepare to move forward. And just as a clarification before I hand this off to Tim, there isn't closed captioning now. We are only having live closed captioning during worship service. But as I said, this is in some ways a rehearsal, a practice for our congregational meeting. So it suggests to me that we might want to think about hiring a captionist for our congregational meeting. So that's good to know. And I appreciate people's comments inviting us to consider the ways we can be more inclusive right now. All right, Tim.
Sure thing. We're gonna continue.
Tim, you are muted.
Am I? I tried to.
No, you're not muted?
I tried to unmute.
Oh, you're not muted.
I'm not muted.
I had muted you. I'm so sorry. Carry on.
Obviously, with all the uncertainty, we expect to continue meeting online through at least the summer. When we gather in person, we have so many people that it's really not possible to have an ordinary worship service together with and continue to have physical distancing. And in order to be able to change that, we're going to continue to monitor on a regular basis. But the fact is that until there's a reliable vaccine available and people have received it, we have enough high-risk people, including myself and a lot of other people in the congregation, that just wouldn't be responsible to gather us all together and make it so difficult, make it frankly dangerous for people health-wise. The way the physical distancing is going to be relaxed is going to have to be seen. We're going to have to monitor that. We may make our own decisions independent of what's going on in other sectors of the community in order to be sure to keep people safe. Through this trying time, it's going to be very difficult to meet in person, so we need to really maximize these online opportunities and non-personal things. As it says on the screen, the isolation and the quarantine and the illnesses and the risk aren't shared evenly by all people, but as a group, we need to try to be responsible for one another and do as much caring for one another as we can. In the long term, life will be very difficult, even after we start to meet together in person. The economy is going to be drastically affected, and our church membership and the community at large will all be affected deeply by this, and we'll need to be really working hard to care for one another and care for those that we can beyond our own membership and the confines of our own community. Many congregations will be affected. We'll need to be keeping in mind that with our online presence, we can support people who we might not otherwise be able to support even after we start meeting together in person. I think that's pretty much all that I was going to be talking about. And I will pass it on over to Kyle for a continuation here. Okay, Kyle.
Hi, I'm Kyle Williams. I'm a member of the board and this year's chair of stewardship. Now, this week we'll be closing our stewardship drive, and we'll start the process of planning for the next church year. That's the church year that begins in July, just a little over 2 short months from now. So far, over 70% of us have pledged, 70% of households, with an average increase of over 9% per household. Now that's, to me, that's cause for celebration. A big part of planning for the coming year is, of course, the budgeting. But if we have to budget based on our current confirmed pledges, the 70%, we'll have to make some changes, some austerity measures, you might say. And so our ultimate goal, and the goal of any stewardship campaign and stewardship in general, is 100% participation. And we're not there. We're not there yet. So with that knowledge, I'll then again turn it over to Shari to talk about some more of the so whats.
Sure. Well, so I will pick up with the first so what that just stems on or builds on what you were talking about, Kyle, right now, but in terms of stewardship. So right now, we've seen a great response from the folks who have already submitted their pledge, but we've got 30% or so of households who haven't yet pledged. One of the implications of our assumption in terms of budgeting is that we'd, as you said, have to take some austerity measures or make some big changes. So pledging now allows us to responsibly budget for next year. And so just as a so what, a pretty clear direct implication, if you haven't yet pledged, get your pledge in, get it online or get it into the mail after this meeting, because that would help us plan for next year. Tim already covered some of this, but some of the implications for us as we assess what our current situation are is that online church is going to continue. That if we expect, given both the risk of our population and the number of people that we gather with, that we won't be worshiping together through the summer, we're going to continue gathering online. Congregational meeting, budget presentation, Soul Matters groups, Wellspring groups, all other church gatherings will now be able to happen online. And so we're planning for that. We're also heading towards a hybrid society, a hybrid church in some ways. Online and Zoom are not the only answer to human connection right now, right? Our spiritual practices of stillness and solitude and song still invite us into other ways of being. But as we prepare to re-enter society, we know that that will happen in waves, in tiers, and because of risk assessment and a diverse level of risk, that even when we're on site, even when we're again gathering in person, we're gonna need to continue to live stream. At this point, we can make the commitment to say that because some people won't be able to gather with us who are already in our community, and because congregations from a wider regional base are joining us, and because of ongoing economic shifts, we will find that our regional presence in Unitarian Universalism, which is achieved through either live streaming or worship created and delivered specifically to be online, those are going to be important parts of what we offer. Another important implication is closing the gaps in connection. I know that there's a digital divide that we can look to bridge in a variety of ways. There are also folks who have been waiting it out, thinking, okay, this is going to be a few weeks. I'm not going to bother to phone in, or I'm not going to bother to do this thing that doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel the same as being able to hug or hold hands at church. I think right now, if you're on, you've already made that choice to join us online, but you probably know somebody who's waiting it out. And so we need to encourage them to not delay, to start connecting with our community. Small groups right now become even more important. In a church of our size, in addition to Sunday worship, gathering in smaller ways, whether that's Soul Matters or Wellspring or other communities of care and spiritual deepening, those have always been critical, but that's going to become even more important moving forward. And when we look at a tiered re-entry into society, those might be places where people can gather in smaller ways before we're able to do large gatherings. But even now, with groups meeting online or by the phone, those are an important piece to help us connect. And finally, one implication of these assumptions is that our mission remains the same, our ends, the ways in which we articulate what we hope to do in the world and how we hope to be, those don't change. So our core mission is through spiritual connection in community. We listen deeply to others and ourselves. We open to wonder and transformation, and we serve together with love and humility. None of this changes. The particulars and how we accomplish these, how we pursue these, have shifted, But right now, we're continuing to find ways to deepen into this core mission. And so some of the things that I just said that I want to make sure that we cover before we break up, because I know that there's a lot to take in. There's a lot that you've heard, but I'm also seeing some questions come through in the chat that are worth me answering and articulating for everyone collectively. So I'm hearing folks encouraging others to pledge that even if you're not able to pledge right now, reach out to us for a waiver. A small amount is better than no information at all. And the ways in which we collectively are able to live out our mission are really important. I've seen a couple of people asking about our various small groups, and I'm excited about that. So our core small group ministry is called Soul Matters here at First Unitarian, and we have groups that have been going on for years. We have groups that are just forming, and we have groups that are looking to add 1 or 2 or 3 more people. So if you are new to the congregation, I invite you to email our ministerial lead for adult faith formation. That's Reverend Bob, Rev Bob at rochesterunitarian.org, and he can help you get connected. If you're looking to join a Wellspring group or to journey the path of Wellspring, we know that new groups will happen in the fall, but this summer, our summer rhythm might look a little bit different. And so we're exploring, if there's interest, whether or not we might start a group that begins in June or July. So similarly, reach out to Reverend Bob. Let us know if you're looking for a way to get connected. There are multiple pathways, whether that's to spiritual maturity and deepening, whether that's to leadership and service, whether that's to membership. There's always a way to move forward and become more deeply engaged here at First Unitarian. And every place you are on that path, it's our job, I believe, to look behind to the place that we were previously and make sure that you're helping someone along. That's a core part of our mission here. So I can see now that people are trying to recruit in the chat, and I love that spirit. I highly recommend, if you're a Facebook user, hopping on our Facebook community group. That's been really great for forming informal connections, and the conversation continues with Reverend Bob as well as with each other. So we're going to break out into smaller groups now, because the questions of what, so what, and now what are big questions. When we combine the assumptions and these implications, what do we do now? I propose that together we are and become the church we need right now and the church that we're going to want in the future. Your staff and your board of trustees and your ministers, we are going to need to spend some discerning time, some time in retreat over the next couple of months, really getting into and crafting the ways that we'll move forward. But it takes all of us, our time, our talent, our treasure, all of the ways in which our presence matters in this collective enterprise that is being the church. That's something that implicates every single one of you. And so in our breakout groups, we're going to split up into groups of no more than 8 people. And some of the groups will have named facilitators. If you don't have someone in your group that identifies as a facilitator, I'm going to work to rearrange people. But I also trust you all. There are a few guidelines that I'd like you to follow. Because we've got a number of people and because I want to make sure that everyone can join in, I'm going to ask that somebody keep time. Each speaker speaks for no more than 2 minutes. And once everyone has had a chance to speak, you can pass if you'd like, but once everyone has had a chance to speak, then the group can continue the conversation afterwards. And if someone can take notes and email them to me, email them to revshari, at Rochester Unitarian. I'll message all of this to all of you in your breakout groups as well, but keep notes so that we know what you're sharing then. Here's what we'd like to hear from you. It's a lot to take in, everything we just said, as well as everything you're experiencing. So what are you worried about now? And what do you hope for? How does church fit in with those anxieties and hopes, those fears and dreams? And the second question for you is, what can you do to help the church and our community live out our mission right now? So in some ways, the questions are pretty simple. What do you need and what can you offer? For those of you who have to go, that is completely fine. I would recommend that you jump off right now. I'll give you 20 seconds, but I'd ask that as we split people off, if you're not planning to participate in the breakout group, or if you find that you're in a breakout group where, for whatever reason, other folks haven't participated or they've forgotten to log off, just come on back to the lobby and I will reassign you. So if you're on the phone, *6 will unmute you. And as for everyone else, I am incredibly grateful for all of you and so glad to be in religious community with you.